Welcome to the World Wild Podcast. I'm Miles Irving, and I've been thinking about what I want to say for this introduction. And, I really want to just draw attention to the fact that at this time, all the networks that we belong to that are trying to, touch upon something more life-enhancing, trying to sort of opt out of the stuff that negates all the good things that we would, set out as our priorities if really pushed, or, what really matters, what's really important. So all these networks, like the contact that we have with our friends, I'm sure everybody's talking to friends they haven't talked to for ages, talking to their family. But most importantly, what's really struck me this week is the way that local food networks are being really strengthened and enhanced. I think pretty much everybody in the UK that runs any kind of box scheme is overwhelmed by demand, and people are just seeking us out. We've had people in the village just calling up and saying, "Do you supply vegetables and so on?" And we've got wild garlic in our local shop. Things that we just wouldn't have thought of doing a few weeks ago, because we ourselves were frustratingly so busy sending food elsewhere and overlooking the opportunity that we've got to reach people in the village. We've started a Facebook group this week, Foraging for Kids, which is just called that if you're on Facebook. I'm no fan of Facebook, but it seems to me it is an effective way to reach people with information, and so I'm quite excited about this group. So all round, it just seems like the way that we connect in life-giving ways is being enhanced, and that's the network, and we have been forced to withdraw from the machine-like just streams of things. Whether you think about people commuting to London, there's this sort of pipe or conduit, which is an idea we touch on in this week's conversation with Adrian Boots. That's like a pipe of people going out to London and a pipe of people coming back with no contact with their surroundings. And although there are exceptions to this, like there are groups of commuters that talk to each other and therefore make that a life-enhancing thing. Most people are on their phones, even with earphones on, right next to other human beings and not talking to them. So everywhere you look, there's these things of stuff moving around without there being life-giving connections as a result of the movement. In fact, there's a severance of connections, and yet right now we see all of these wonderful, intricate linkings becoming more intricately linked, and that's what it's all about. I've said many times in the chats I give on wild food walks and when I stand up and give talks and so on. I'm sure I've touched it on here. What we need is the emergence of this kind of the sum of the parts to come through. Like life emerging from organic chemicals billions of years ago, like consciousness emerging from lots of nerve cells being connected together till the point that eventually there was a conscious being that emerged out of the sum of those parts. Looking at the attempts we've made to make machines to make things work, it doesn't work like that. These are very limited connections that are highly efficient. Again, they're kind of conduits within the machine thing. Whereas when we have social and living systems, we can't control anything. All we can do is facilitate the emergence of something better, something good, something that is the greater than the sum of the parts. And the only way we can do that is by fostering these linkages. The more connections we have, and the better quality those connections are, and the more diversity of the different things that are being joined together, then we have these amazing networks that give rise to emergent properties. And I think we're seeing community emerging, we're seeing local food systems emerging, and in that we're seeing a social fabric between people and landscapes emerging. And obviously I feel the foraging thing is so uniquely potent in that sense, because it is a response to a network that is ecology in a particular place. And if our culture of food, our culture of what we do with our time together starts being woven into that fabric of ecology, and then the complexity of the compounds in all of those plants becomes woven into the fabric of our this network, which is our bodies, many cells and organs and tissues just woven together in a network, which is our bodies. It is so uniquely and profoundly life enhancing. Okay, I also wanted to give somebody else's words some space here. I frequently hear from Mark Lewis, who's on the earlier podcast. I say, earlier as in a few months back. Mark is a guy in Arizona. He is part of a Native American community there, but he's also working in a sort of outreach capacity to people there to gather them into wild foods. Anyway, you can go and check out Mark's podcast there, and you'll get more of his story. But he's constantly communicating to me wonderful insights from his situation there in Arizona, and commenting on the global situation too. And he wrote me an email this week, which I did ask would he come and do a Skype message so we could have his voice reading it. But he's asked me to read it myself, so I'll do that just now. So he comments on last week's podcast and says, the most recent conversation with Robin Harford brings you home, the senses, learning, and not just the science, but also the sensory experiences to ID the plants. Brothers and sisters, observation, intimacy in relations. Get the personalities out of the way, self-authority and confidence, community placards so neighbours can be delighted by learning about their gatherable neighbours. All the touchstones. Now think also on this. We are surrounded by all our relatives. Alive things, not alive things, plants, animals, fungi, so much like us, bacteria much further away, but still our living family, but also that which is not alive, but powerful nevertheless, rocks, air, viruses. The coronavirus, COVID-19, is our relative. While the Western idea seems to be to engage the world to find a magic bullet to kill the invader, the indigenous view is that this is a relative we have wronged, now come, or sent, if you're into the Gaia hypothesis, to set things right. What we have to do is figure out what needs getting right. We must pay attention. We are experiencing deaths from the virus in the native community. Scary, since there are not enough of us to go around, not enough elders that we can afford to lose anymore, cognizant that viral warfare has been used against us in the very recent past. But we're still here. The hospital in our midst is a hive of activity now, with lots of trucks and choppers going in and out. I'm manning the farmers market on Saturdays, doing a series of fermentation vids soon to be up on the web. A lot of folks deluging me with attention requests. Still selfishness in the midst of a lesson on the opposite. Yikes. And then this is in response to it. He said a little bit more when I asked him would he read that, and he said, no, you read it. He said it'd be easier for you to just read the words. So this is what he sent me this morning, and I'll read that too. Surrounded by hummingbirds and new spring here. Old favourites back on the scene like cholla flower buds, yucca flowers, grasses, acacia and olive flowers, citrus, elderberry. All the things we need to offer our brother COVID-19 to get him to settle down, plus various greens and bulbs like calacortus and others unexpected, but maybe the new norm with climate change, especially the cacti flowers. Palo Verdes, way early. We walk through miracle gifts brought by our brothers and sisters. And don't forget your native strength. So this is him talking to me. Was a time when people remembered the seasons there, and that day comes again. The land offers up the gifts you need. It speaks to those who listen. And Mark goes on to post in the first, to that email, he posts in the first half of Chaucer's Prelude to the Canterbury Tales, which does seem very apt. I've had a go at reading it, but I can't really do justice to the old English. But I found a fantastic video by a guy called Raymond Crook. That's Crook with an E at the end, he does a beautiful version of it, which also has the Old English translated into modern English, and he sings it as a folk song. So I'm hoping to, in time, to get this posted, to get the MP3. I've reached out to him to ask whether he'd let us have the MP3. But if not, it's worth coming back, because if he does it in a week's time, we'll add it to the end of the podcast. But we will provide a link to that. But it's pretty cool. It talks about people coming through the countryside in Kent, and the sick seeking healing. It's all very apt, as Mark's words so often are. Not that these are Mark's words, but he has very aptly sent these words. Okay, so that's it for the introduction. We'll get on now to the conversation with Adrian Boots. As you'll see, Adrian's a lovely guy, and we've had fun talking about poisonous plants and all sorts of things. So check out Adrian's website, and you may want to tap into what he does in terms of outdoor experiences, learning some foraging, and other bushcraft stuff on one of his walks. So yeah, we'll now get on to the chat with Adrian. This landscape ecology stuff, I want to understand that stuff a lot better myself. So
yeah, sure.
Really interesting area of work.
It is. I mean, I guess I'm not in academia anymore, When I was working in industry, and by that I mean DEFRA, Natural England, that sort of thing, I sort of carried on working at the institutions, and then obviously, like I guess yourself, some years ago, I decided that was enough, and sort of now I'm doing my own thing now. So, but I can tell you a bit about landscape ecology if you want.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear you talk about that.
It's really using the ecological principles to and applying that to the landscape, a landscape scale rather. Yeah. So it's what I specifically worked in the area was looking at woods, sort of trees, hedges, that sort of thing. And I did some PhD research that was basically around looking at the connectivity of woodland and hedges, and whether or not there was a sort of a movement of plants and particularly woody species from one to another here in the UK. So that was what I was very interested in. Unfortunately, I got quite distracted because there was a lot of wild food around at the time when I was doing my research. So I was feeding myself, but also I guess about that sort of time I started to get really into the wild food side of things, which I guess would be about 99, sort of 2000. Everyone's had the book Food for Free, and so I thought, that was interesting. So I went back to that. And reread that about that time, and I thought this is really a very, very interesting thing. So whilst I was looking at a specific thing for the research, in my mind I was also thinking, this is an interesting process also for wild food. Is there a relationship between a larger habitat of woodland and wild food in hedges? So does wild garlic, for example, follow that hedge line? Do you see what I mean? Does it sort of creep across the landscape in that way? Does it? Because obviously it requires shady, sort of shade. It likes that sort of thing. And hedges are basically linear woodlands, so you don't often get patches of wild garlic in the middle of a field, so where it's dry and too much sun. So it was sort of looking at those sorts of principles, and the upshot of that pretty much was that. The edges of things, the edges of woods, along hedgerows, that's where the interesting stuff tends to happen. The middle of the woodland really isn't a very exciting place unless you've got a clearing. So for me, it was the edges of the woods. This is where most energy comes into the system. It gets the most sort of nutrient, it gets the most light, it gets the most rain. And so edges of a woodland are the much more exciting locations, and hedges are great big long edges, basically. So I did a lot of studying of hedgerows. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
Yeah. You have to forgive me. I'm an obsessive compulsive rhymer, and I just picked up on your hedges and edges.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there's something to say about sedges, but
yeah. I'm sure we could get it in there somewhere.
I mean, seriously, are there sedges on the edges?
Well, it could well be, yeah, but not necessarily where I am. I'm lucky. I'm out in the countryside here, up on the Mendip Hills, just southwest of Bristol, and this is the sort of area in Somerset where I did most of my research. So it doesn't tend to be a lot of sedges. We're quite high and dry here, but on the Somerset levels, stacks of it.
Well, there's I am thinking of pendulous sedge as something I've seen on the edge of a woodland, like on a like a dikey situation, and there's lots of pendulous sedge there.
Yeah. I'm thinking of there's a woodland, a forest actually. It's mainly planted up with pine and that sort of spruce and stuff like that, and in the darker, wetter edges of that along the tracks, there's sort of there's pendulous sedge along there. Not so much where I am; it's much drier and higher here.
Okay. Yeah.
So, when you get where I'm based on the Mendip Hills here, it's interesting. We get a lot of rain, but the rain, because it's limestone, and water just drops straight through it and comes out spring line on the edge of the. Much lower down in the valleys, so where that woodland's situated, it's a bit lower than where we are. So, yeah.
a lot of rain to get your mushrooms coming up then.
Well, yeah, there are mushrooms here, but it's not a fantastic mushroom area where I am. It's a bit of a shame, really. There is, I mean, this is something I try and communicate to people. You've got to go out a lot. You've got to be out a lot of the time to see where this stuff is. You're no good sort of going, right, I'm going to go mushroom foraging today, and on that particular day, there's nothing. Yeah. You know, it's just, you know, you've got to be out all the time so you can see where the patches are, where this stuff, you know, wood blue come up with this, you know, in the same spot, not necessarily year after year, but in that location. And so I wouldn't say it was a fabulous area for that. I mean, originally I come from the New Forest, which was always seemed to be, you know, provide so much fungi. Here it's quite sparse in comparison, but it is around.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to what I sort of knocked us off there with talking about sedges, but like the edges thing, I do think that's fascinating, and it's also the fact that, you know, being an edge means it's a boundary of two different kinds of places, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you've got this meeting point between two completely different kinds of ecology.
That is where the magic happens, if you like. Yeah. Fields, for example, can be very bland places. If you've got a silage field that's just full of ryegrass and clover, apart from the clover, there's not a lot going on necessarily in that field. If it hasn't been disturbed for too long, you might be lucky and get some fungi come up. But mainly, it's that transition point between that field and, say, the field boundary and where a hedge line or indeed a fence might be, because fences are, you know, birds land on fences and they deposit their little packets of loveliness there, and they might drop some seed in. You get a naturally sort of dispersed hedge along a fence line. All of a sudden, you've got elder, you've got bramble, so they're not bad. It's not bad places for foragers to go to look. Really, I try to sort of say to people, there's no point in wandering off into the middle of the field. Walk around the edge of it. You're much more likely to find something interesting, either a shrub or a plant, you know, that is going to be edible at any time of the year. Middle of the field usually is a pretty dull place to be, unless it used to have a hedgerow across the middle of it at one time that's been grubbed out, and you might have a solitary tree stuck out in the middle of the field, or indeed where that tree used to be, if it was recently felled or cut down by a farmer, you might find around that one little spot, you'll find something interesting, you know. So there might be a collection of different plants that really are sort of shade-loving plants, but haven't got the message yet that the actual tree that was shading them has disappeared a long time ago. So normally, for example, I sort of encourage people to be careful when they're picking things like sorrel. Yeah. Because of looking a bit like lords and ladies. And I always sort of say, go to the middle of the field. Interestingly, if you're going to pick sorrel, don't pick it from around the edges. You know, you've got lords and ladies, looks far too similar. But I have had examples where there has been a historic boundary or a tree, and that shady spot has been enough to allow lords and ladies to still grow in the middle of the field. So there's never one rule of thumb that works all the time.
Yeah, that's just okay. I'll have to add that to my list of what you call it. Well, I don't know, things you add on to qualify the blanket statement you've just made. Yeah, so
that's it. Yeah, because you know, people are always asking you, is there an easy, quick fix? Is there a rule of thumb you can give me? Is there some easy to remember sort of nugget of information that will last? That I can just go out and do, and there is, go and pick your sorrel from the middle of a field, middle of a permanent pasture or a meadow or something. But I have seen examples of lords and ladies being in the middle of the field, so it doesn't work every time. So you do have to show them the lords and ladies and the sorrel together, so that they can really see the differences.
Well, it's funny you should mention lords and ladies, because I've had two lords and ladies situations arise this week. So I have a friend who actually came on a fermentation course the other week, and we did a tiny bit of foraging, and it kind of makes me realize that a tiny bit of foraging is probably more of a hindrance than a help.
Yeah.
What I've managed to do is get this lady excited
about the notion that she can go out and pick stuff. But the bit I did on the foraging was so cursory.
Yeah.
I was deliberately zipping my lip, to not say too much. I thought we'll be out here for an hour and a half. Yeah. And this is a fermentation course, so I got to quickly show people this. Yeah. I realized, it was dangerous because what has happened is my friend was out for a long walk with her family, and I get a phone call from her husband saying she's eaten something. It's tingling and numb.
Oh dear.
Tingling and numb. But I said this to my wife, and she said she's eaten Lords and Ladies. I said, yeah, but tingling? You'd say burning, wouldn't you?
Yeah, burning. Yeah.
Maybe she's trying to downplay it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it turns out when they sent a photograph, it was Lords and Ladies, and she had thought it was Doc. I mean,
no.
Forgive me, dear friend, if you happen to be listening to this podcast, but I don't know how she got Doc and Lords and Ladies confused. But it made me realize I had done a dangerous level of informing there, so not fully disclaimer, because that happened. And then the second thing that happened this week. The following day, I don't know, it was like someone was tugging my sleeve going, you need to be thinking more about Lords and Ladies. Because the following day, I'm out in a piece of woodland near me, visiting a wild garlic patch, actually, and I found a little hole in the ground, and inside that hole, I mean, it wasn't deep, it was like maybe an inch deep or a bit more, I saw a patch of white. And at first I thought, maybe it's a truffle, that some animal, and maybe I disturbed this animal a minute ago because it looked so bright and fresh.
Yeah.
It's this white patch an inch or so down. But I excavated further, and what I picked up was a large Lords and Ladies tuber.
Wow. Nibbled
by some creature, and you just know what's happened. That creature, who we would assume they all know you can't eat that.
Yeah.
No, you couldn't eat that. It's eaten enough very, very quickly before the calcium oxalate crystals kick in. For anyone listening doesn't understand, is calcium oxalate is nasty little crystals which are like shards of glass with hooks on that happen to be laced with what in this context you'd think of as an irritant poison called protease. But in another context, in your stomach, that's an enzyme that dissolves protein. But when it's in your mouth, poisoning your mouth, it's an enzyme dissolving you. Not a protein. So it hurts like hell.
Yeah, I bet.
This poor little mouse, or whatever it was, has eaten that much and then suddenly gone, ah! And probably not far away from where I was foraging that for the garlic and found that little hole.
Yeah, good Lord. Well, a funny little Lords and Ladies stories I went to a relative of my wife and a party in the garden, and where there was some Lords and Ladies along the hedge, and where the flower spike grows, and you've got the sort of berries, if you like, going from green to orange to red. They were in their sort of orangey red phase at that point, and they had a young child. And this child got bored because the adults were all having a barbecue, gone along to the these berries and decided to investigate. But you'll be pleased to know he didn't eat them; he stuck them up his nose. So they called me over, considering that I knew about these things. But all I did was hook them out of his nostrils. It wasn't actually, do you know what I mean? So he didn't eat them, that's the worst it's ever got for me. And that was fortunately not very serious. But I can imagine it'd be rather bad if someone did eat that. And it's a bit like dog's mercury as well. I always say the clue is in the name, but there are no signs. There are no little plaques next to dog's mercury saying "Don't eat me." Weirdly, some years ago, I was doing many years ago. I was doing a conservation thing in some woodland, and somebody had a young dog. It was a bit bigger than a puppy, and it was running around grabbing mouthfuls of dog's mercury.
Right.
And and it was doing like a scatty sort of crazy dog thing. It was running out and back, and it was grabbing mouthfuls of vegetation as it was going and eating it. And we were chasing this dog, trying to stop him, and he thought it was a great big game. And then very, very soon afterwards, he was vomiting bright green, fluffy, frothy, and had terrible diarrhea later as well. Again, green. It survived, but it was quite sick. So yeah, it's I think you're right. Animals don't necessarily instinctively know. They will experiment and maybe bite the big one as a result, but maybe not. Weirdest thing I've ever actually sticking out of the ground, if just as we were talking about it, it was a set of chicken feet, pair of feet, stuck out of this bank, and I thought, no, it can't be possible. A chicken's flown into this. No, don't be daft. Anyway, so I pulled the feet out, and there was like a completely consumed carcass. There was bits and bobs on it, feathers and bone and wings and stuff. And I pulled this thing out, and it must have been a ferret or a stoat or I don't know, something of that nature had got hold of a chicken and dragged the whole thing in and just left its feet sticking out. And I thought that was pretty incredible. You couldn't mistake what it was, obviously, but I can't imagine a rat would do that. It had to have been something that's capable of carrying many times its own body weight.
To drag it in the ground, do you think?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty freaky.
So, Mark, got any other good tales about misdiagnosis?
Well, I think we could definitely say more about lords and ladies, because that's my only personal plant poisoning story personally. Is when I first got started, and I'd read all the books and things like that, and then but you don't always remember all the information.
Well, quite, yeah.
And Food for Free was my reference point for lords and ladies. The only bit I remembered was it had the tuber that people had eaten, and I'd forgotten the important bit of information that, according to Maybe and lots of other people, there were ways that people rendered those tubers edible. So I'd only remember the last bit. Not the fact that they're poisonous and need rendering edible.
Yeah.
So I was that mouse,
yes,
some years ago. I was again picking wild garlic, but somehow the ground was loose, and I don't know how I ended up with this tuber in my hand, but I did, and I knew it belonged to the lords and ladies, and I took a nibble.
Wow, interesting experiment.
Yeah, but I didn't think I was experimenting. I thought I was eating a good edible thing.
Yeah.
Forgotten it was half partial recollection. So just you really need to be a bit more circumspect.
Sure. I mean, it's very interesting. I've done a lot of bushcraft over the years, and I've run quite a few bushcraft courses, and studied with some very, very interesting people. Ray Mears, Lars Fall, Mors Kahansky, over the years, and often these guys, it's really interesting when you read a lot of the bushcraft sort of books about wild food. They're talking about survival mode, and they'll say, you can nibble a little bit of this and wait so many seconds, and then try some more, and then wait a few minutes, and so on. And I've heard this trotted out so many times, not by these guys, mind, not by the guys that I've been lucky enough to study with, but by other members of the sort of bushcraft world. And I don't know whether they get it from the SAS handbook. I don't know what it is. But for me, it's a bit of a nonsense, really, because at the end of the day, there is lots of knowledge out there. There are some brilliant books, and there's some great people you can go and study with. The best thing to do is to take that knowledge with you into the countryside rather than start experimenting on yourself with potential disastrous consequences. So it really is, the amount of times I've heard that, and I've said, I'm really sorry. I just don't buy that. We're not back in the, Mesolithic period trying to work out what we can eat and what we can't eat and experimenting on ourselves. We've got a body of knowledge, and we should be taking that knowledge with us, and applying it. You don't, there's historical records. There's people out there that know this stuff. You've got to be able to access that first and arm yourself with that knowledge. Obviously, you need the experience. You've got to practice to get good at this sort of thing. But, I don't think there is a need to experiment on anything at all, and risk yourself. Interestingly, one of the worst examples of poisoning I've come across was actually an agricultural setting. I had to go out to meet a grazier who'd lost a herd of beef cattle, whole herd, gone, dead. What had happened is they were in a field that had been flooded, and so the centre of the field was full of water, so they weren't grazing there. They were grazing around the edges of the field because they were raised. And what happened is when you've got these ditches that are cleaned out, all the tailings are put up on the bank, basically, and it builds up higher sides to the fields eventually over time. And that means that when they do get flooding, or the fields fill up with water, it's only the banks that have got a decent amount of grass on them. So they're on the bank eating the grass, and then they're pushing in the sides and exposing tubers. It was hemlock water dropwort, which is pretty much one of the most poisonous things you can lay your hands on. Unfortunately, they were all fairly young cattle, so they might not have had the herd experience, if you know what I mean. They might not have had the experience of having older cows teaching them. They probably weren't hefted to that environment, if you like. They weren't, they were young stock, and they probably hadn't had a lot of contact with older animals, which would have taught them to avoid it. Yeah. And so what happened is they were running out of grass on the banks. They exposed these the tubers of hemlock water dropwort, ate them, and not very long afterwards were properly dead. And so when I got there, it was a field full of young stock that basically were all bloated. And this only happened the day before. They died. There's nothing we could do. It's unfortunate. I mean, the grazier was looking for some sort of compensation or something. I don't know, but I don't think that was going to happen, because if you're grazing animals in a field where there's no grazing, in essence, they are going to look for something to eat. When all the grass is gone, they're going to look for something to eat. So there was a stocking issue, unfortunately, and a suitability of the ground that it was on. Now, I appreciate not everyone can stick their animals in a shed during the winter, but that was a really tough lesson to learn, because it was upsetting to see the animals like that, upsetting for the grazier, obviously, and it was just a poor situation. But it was at that point that I really got into hemlock water dropwort as a plant of interest. Yeah. And when doing foraging courses, I basically tell everyone to avoid umbellifers, full stop, because they're just too tricky, I think, for most people. And I think that links back quite nicely to this person that you were trying to show, who picked the lords and ladies. It's the amount of time you could spend all your time just doing edible umbellifers and the poisonous ones, and I think people still would get it wrong, because they're just too similar. I think in a lot of people's minds, they want to do, they're so quick, they're so in a rush to pick something that is edible, that is a wild food, that I think that sometimes excitement gets the better of them, and that'd be that. Same is very true for mushrooms as well.
I mean, I've spent a lot of time drawing up tables in my book, comparing the edible and the toxic umbellifers, and there is so much detail when you start getting down to it. It's a big subject. So how I tend to approach it is, if you want to do these plants, this is something that's going to require quite a lot of work in terms of learning the plants. If you want to just go out and forage something, start with nettles, because you cannot misidentify it. It didn't sting you, it's not a nettle. Easy, So, I kind of give it to people like you decide your level of engagement. But these ones, there is a risk involved. Whereas, if we deal with the cabbage family, it's safe as houses, or safe as mustard, you might say. So, it's kind of mapping out the territory for people so they can choose. But I agree, our classic thing with hemlock water dropwort, which for anyone listening, the deal with hemlock water dropwort is it's an aquatic plant that looks somewhat like flatleaf parsley or celery. And unfortunately, my absolute favorite wild herb, which is wild celery, grows right alongside it. And we have two different places that we know of in Kent where the two plants are growing right next to each other. And we don't harvest from them. I mean, it's as simple as that. We just don't. It is so spine-chillingly alarming when you see the two plants right next to each other, you could so easily accidentally pick one leaf. I mean, I wouldn't now, but like we've just kept that as a rule. Like, don't go to that territory of picking a poisonous plant, edible plant, right? And it's the same with hemlock, hemlock and cow parsley. They grow right. But it's funny. We do seem to be finding a topic with some meat here for this chat, like the poisonous one, because I do say to people on foraging walks, I say, look, I've got two jobs here. I think two main jobs anyway. One is to inspire you as to the many wonderful edible possibilities. And the other is to just slightly scare the shit out of you, because if I do one without the other, I am leading you into a dangerous place without you realizing that it's actually a dangerous place. It's
almost the best bit of a foray, really, is to scare people senseless. You almost put them off.
Do you want it, sort of thing? Do you
want it badly enough
to navigate these hazards? Yeah.
It's interesting with some fungi as well. I mean, there's virtually for every edible one, there is one that looks very similar that is inedible or possibly poisonous. And I think that nature plays a bit of a joke on us, really, with all this, which I kind of love as well. It is it keeps you on your toes. It's an interesting thing, I mean, there's lots of examples, but I think people, back to what I was saying before, I think people do want a shortcut with all this. And they want to know what they can do very, very quickly and go out straight away. And I just think it takes a little bit longer, a little bit more practice. And I always sort of joke, you can always practice on someone else if you don't like them.
Yeah. But I mean, it's an unfortunate situation we're in that we don't know this stuff, Like, I mean, I always remember listening to Francois Couplan, great French forager. He gave a talk at this event I was at, and he basically, his talk was showing people a bunch of plants. That was it. This is cleavers. This is this. This is this. This is this. And then he just stopped and looked at everybody and says, "How is it you people don't know this?" And I just thought that was very. It needs to be said, like, how is it that you are an organism that isn't 2 years old? You are sitting there in this seat looking at me, and you're like 20, 25, 30, 35, going up through the ages, all of these different age groups sitting in front of me. How can you be alive on the planet for this many years and not know this, what I've just told you? Because this is actually just fundamental, that you're a living organism. You would know what to eat in the place where you are, and I think it's so, I just think that needs saying, that this is really, really dysfunctional, that here you are, a human being that wanders about every day, gets up, does what you do and goes to sleep again. And you manage to be in this place and be totally oblivious to all of these other organisms, which are right there, tailored in a sense to your needs, because you've co-evolved with biochemical needs in your body, practical needs. It's all out there for you to weave together for clothes and pull together for meals and whatever. It's all there, and you're oblivious. Oh dear, it's like we're really it's like that thing in Avatar. Did you watch that film Avatar?
I've seen Avatar, yes.
Yeah, and where he's stumbling around and the lady who he actually hooks up with, she says, "You're like a baby. You don't know what to do," and we're like that, aren't we? Unfortunately, and I just think it is embarrassing. We've been caught naked, and what, unfortunately, part of what we're doing when we do these foraging walks is address the fact that these helpless human beings that we're talking to, but knowing that you and I are also helpless human beings, because it doesn't matter how much you and I have been really getting stuck in to this as a subject matter in an area of actively engaging. If we didn't start when we were 2, like normal would, and they're tiny, then we're going to be playing catch up for the rest of our life, actually, because
Absolutely.
we're supposed to know this when we're tiny.
I mean, a lot of anthropologically, a lot of other tribal cultures that still practice sort of hunting gathering and the foraging element, they have done it, like you say, from 2 years old. We've completely lost that in our society, well, Western world, I guess, and so we can only ever play catch up. And it's the thing is, I believe we are all hunter gatherers at heart. We've all got it's in our DNA, and even the most urbanized person, you take them out and get them to pick, say, wild garlic, the joy that they experience, and it's very interesting. I always say to people, look at the shape that person is making, that sort of slightly stooped, reaching out, that picking, collecting, gathering pose that people make. That has been done for the last 100,000, 250,000 years. It's incredible. What a direct link to, our ancestors. And, it's very interesting. I think that we've become very isolated from that. Our wonderful agrarian society, we've gone from being, sort of generalists in a way where we, like you say, we make our own clothes, we feed ourselves, we know which animals to follow, which time of year, we know what all this stuff does. Well, it's what I guess bushcraft is today. It's this sort of having the knowledge about what different things can do for you. But we've ended up becoming specialists. We rely on someone else to provide our food. We rely on someone else to, provide the heating. We rely on someone else to do our technology. We rely on someone else to make our clothes, make our shoes. And we in turn, go off and are specialised ourselves. We go maybe drop in the car, get in the car, drive to work, go and do our, we're little worker bees basically.
Well, I'll let you count, but I can't help butting in because what I was thinking while you were saying that is a quote from some book I read years ago where the guy said, specialisation is for insects.
Well, maybe we live in a more insectoid society. Do you know what I mean? It's very interesting. I don't know. I can only imagine what it was like to be in, historic days gone by, but I've got a pretty good idea when you're hanging out in the woods, spending time outside, you're collecting stuff to cook on a campfire. You're adding it to ingredients that you've brought along with you. You might well be sleeping under canvas. You get some inkling about, how people managed in times gone by. And I also think that, interesting you mentioned linking back to sedge earlier. I've always thought that just calling our ancestors hunter-gatherers is a bit limiting. Right. I think there were hunter-gatherers, hunter-gatherer gardeners, the forerunning to farmers. So they would take the seed that they were collecting and just chuck it around. And so they would know it was there. They come back the following year. So they might have been moving around the landscape, but they were also affecting that landscape. They were clearing areas so they could get deer. They would have been chucking seed around because they know a particular plant would be more abundant as a result when you come back. And also there's no cut-off point. People still continue to forage and gather. And even when farming kicked in, they all of a sudden didn't throw down their tools necessarily, tools of hunting and go, stuff that, I'm going to pick up a hoe right away, and get stuck into that. I think that, farmers still go shooting today. They still hunt today. So I don't think there was necessarily, I guess it's really hard to pinpoint that in the archaeological record. It seems like there's a clear changeover point, but people still continue to gather. It wouldn't show up in an archaeological record, but why would you stop when you've got such a great range of stuff right there?
Well, I think we can see when farming became much more dominant in terms of like more people doing it on a larger scale. But there's no, as you say, there's no record that shows when the other stuff ceased to happen, because it didn't cease to happen.
No, quite.
And the point that we've reached now where agriculture is so antithetical to foraging, that's a very new situation, because all over the world, as you say, people are still gathering wild plants, and a lot of them are small scale subsistence farmers.
Absolutely.
Who treat the weeds as part of their crop. This is part of the cycle. They don't yank weeds out and throw them away. They say, oh, thank goodness for that. The fat hen is through, and my crop isn't through yet. Now we've got some green vegetables to use or sell at market, you know. So yeah, there definitely isn't. But agriculture coming in as something which is much more dominant. I think there's a load of things that come in with that, which are, you know, they give a very heavy footprint that we're still, you know, but I mean, yeah, I mean, there's like my favorite example, of which I know pitifully small amounts, but like the Australian indigenous land management practices, they did stuff like that. I don't know how much you've looked into it, Adrian, but stuff like on the banks of the rivers, they would have this yellow daisy yam, and they would gradually just boost that population, and they'd have different zones there, but this never crossed the line into what we call agriculture. It just meant that there was these very managed wild habitats where the ecosystem had been worked with. They'd enhanced what was there. And then the other example, obviously, is the amazing, sophisticated diversity of things they did with fire, different kinds of fire.
Absolutely.
Different times of year, different kinds of places. So the effect of one tool, i.e. fire, being used in all these different subtle ways was incredibly and profoundly diverse in terms of its impact on plant and animal populations, so that they really, really were managing almost every square inch of that landscape very actively, and never crossed the line, in my opinion, into domestication. And therefore they were still in this very reciprocal, non-coercive, non-power relationship situation with the land, which I mean, I put that down. I've said it before, and I'll say it lots more times. I personally think that the Australian situation before the major contact of invasion in 1788 was the most sophisticated civilization that's ever existed on the planet, you know, because it was continent wide, because it was so ancient. Nowhere else was there that kind of landmass with an 50,000-year-old culture, which actually, you know, there weren't little groups here and little groups there. The whole continent, the people had the same culture. Obviously, the diversity in the different regions, but it was the same culture.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it shows that you know, we as a species can live somewhere, and you know, it can be a symbiotic sort of relationship. So yeah, you can see that. I mean, you know, it's very obviously, you know, we sit in here now, you know, in a position of comfort, but you know, we do. I always am amazed, for example, when you read a lot of stuff about the Amazon and places like that, and they're saying it's, you know, complete wilderness, and yet they're just now discovering that actually it's been subtly rearranged, if you like, over thousands of years, because people selectively pick certain things. Even elephants knock down stuff in Africa because they don't like it and they prefer something else. You know, and so, you know, we've got this sort of, I call it gardening, for want of a better word. It's a gardening type sort of tendency to select things that you prefer and those that you don't. You're starting to manage things in a particular way, but it doesn't flip right into, like you say, the heavy footprint of full agriculture. I find it a very interesting sort of subject to consider. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite tickled by using the word gardening, because like I've been looking at the first few chapters of Genesis, you know, like as a source of insight, you know, because these things are not written, you know, whatever anyone thinks. They didn't just come out of a vacuous imagination or some, you know, they come from somewhere, and you know, the Garden of Eden is held up within that story as being this state that was really good and
it's perfect, yeah.
And we're not there anymore. Well, what happens? You know, I'm just reading and rereading the text of those first few chapters to see what comes when you kind of drill down into the detail. Yeah. And one thing is that like there's an exchange of an initial thing, which is obviously very relational, if you look at it, and very kind of they were just gathering, they were just eating from the garden.
Yeah,
it sounds like hunter-gatherers to me. And then there's this thing, but don't do this, And I know people have run off on all kinds of weird theories about they were to eat hallucinogenics and they did, and then they personally buy into that interpretation. You're welcome to it if you want that one, but like personally, I'm seeing that as a thing where they moved into a space of abstract knowledge. Instead of just living, eating the fruit and just life coming, that we now stand outside and we analyze everything and we create these abstractions. So then we come back in with the fruit of our abstraction, which is a tool or a mechanism or a technology or methodology that has come from this abstract generalization. And then we move back in a way that will guarantee an outcome. Now, if we can guarantee an outcome, that means we're in control. If we're in control, then we don't have to trust. So a friend of mine said it's a refusal of contingency, that contingency is this thing where you use something together with, I forget what it is, I'll have to look it up. But it's like in contingency, I can't go it alone. I've got to move with you, because, I can do my bit, but I need your response. Otherwise, this thing that's you and me back and forth together doesn't happen. If I'm in control, contingency is out the window, Now it's like, I will guarantee this because I do this, but I don't need to trust you. I don't need to wait for you. I'm just going to plow on and do it, and plow on and do it is the operative word because
yes, of course.
Right, yeah. It's just funny language gives you those when you're on a roll. So anyway, so what happens is that they do that business of saying, okay, I choose knowledge, abstract knowledge, to stand outside and have this, it's greatly to be desired, to be in that position, it's all very well you saying you're going to take care of me, God or garden or land or whatever it is, that's too mamby-pamby. I need more guarantee, I need to. So now I'm going to seize the reins by having this abstract knowledge and coming. And it says when the exile happens in that story, it says Adam was sent forth to plow. So he's kicked out and said, okay, go and do it then.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in here. You want to be out there. Off you go and take your plow with you. And then what happens is that the son of Adam and Eve got two sons. One of them is a husbandman of animals, which seems to be kind of okay in comparison to the fact that the guy that's plowing the ground and producing vegetables, God doesn't like his offering. And I just think there's something in that just didn't really get the royal seal of approval, because plowing, that's the whole point. You wanted that control. So anyway, he's really pissed off because he doesn't get the brownie points for his offering. Abel's offering is cool and his is not.
Yeah. And
what does he do? He kills his brother, and then the story, God has a chat with him about that and says, well, you're going to have to just be a vagabond and get out from here now, and the earth is not going to yield her good to you. So he says, it's too much because you have turned your face from me and the earth has turned her face from me. Feminine, feminine. The earth has turned her face from me. And so anyway, that's what I've got out of it so far, that this story, which everyone would say, this book is a paradigm for all this terrible patriarchal culture and this, that, and the other, and wrecking the planet and so on. Well, I think actually if you dig around in this text, it's actually saying that this disaster happened because of this exit from Eden, which was basically the beginning of farming. The first murderer was the first guy to plow in the story.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. I mean, from listening to what you're saying there, it really is, it's about our control of nature, or our supposed control of nature, but also it's about a lack of or a control or a lack of control of ourselves. And it's a very interesting thing. I mean, I guess we all like to compartmentalize and because it makes making sense of the world a lot easier. And if we can give it a name and put it in a box, then it makes it even better still. And, I get that completely. But what it is again, it's assuming we are separate from nature, and we don't actually need to rely on it, because hey, we can produce as much food as we like, and we can have it here instantly, and the fact is it just doesn't work like that. In reality, natural systems that are, that even farmers rely on, they need the soil. Okay, I know at the minute they're sort of talking about growing it in air or water, well, that's all very well and good, but you won't be able to scale that up anytime soon, so it's got to be the soil or nothing pretty much right now. And I just think that, in our Western world particularly, science is brilliant, and, but also it's that separating yourself away from nature, so that you can observe it and then make observations and scientific discoveries about it. But I also think that whilst there's real benefits to that, you still need to go, hold on a minute, breaking natural systems so you can impose your will on the top is part of, I know it's what we kind of do, but it's also an issue as well. It's also a problem. Whilst I accept that, people say to me when I'm doing courses, so do you eat wild food all the time? And I'm like, no, I'll go to the shops too, I don't just eat wild food. But you've got to put everything in perspective. And I think that we as a species, I don't know, guess we've always done it. We always want to improve our lot. We always want to control nature. To a certain degree. Very interesting with the current circumstances we're experiencing right now. Clearly nature's got other plans. You've got to wonder about, maybe this is not a bad time to start thinking about how we do stuff, how we break our connections with nature. And maybe we should start thinking that actually, globalization isn't the be all and end all. And intensifying everything we do isn't the be all and end all, and that actually we should start considering some of reconsidering some of our behaviours and our relationship with nature. I mean, I found your story there absolutely fascinating. It's so interesting, the way you put it. It really, for me, it's sort of the first example of of that break from foraging to farming. I mean, it's funny, farming and farmers isn't a bad thing, and aren't bad people. We wouldn't be here if we weren't for farming, and it's, but I think we're all going to need to think long and hard about our future relationship with the land, and what we expect from it. I think that, some sort of revolution does need to occur. I don't know whether getting back to nature fully is gonna work. I think that the volume of food needs to be produced, won't be matched by that straight away. But I do feel that there'd be no harm in just having such a greater variety of stuff available, and actually getting out. If people don't get out and pick their own things, then there is a real disconnect. It kind of links back to what you were saying way back at the beginning. If you can engage people with the outdoors or nature, then I feel that they can very much appreciate it a bit more. And there's something about picking that thing and putting it in your mouth. There is a connection there. There is something that really, not only does it take us back to our ancestors, but it engages you with nature in no other way, that I can think of. I know people like to grow stuff in their garden and say, you've got to try potatoes from the garden. It's way better than potatoes from the shops. Well, it's exactly the same with things that you forage and wild food. Nothing better than getting that sorrel or ramsons, and getting it fresh and doing something with it straight away. It's remarkable. And I don't see why you can't do that in towns, and urban areas. There's plenty of, when I go to cities and parks and gardens or walking along canal or whatever it is I'm doing, I'm always looking for wild food. and think, oh, you can eat that. And I won't eat that because it's got dog shit on it, but I can, technically you could eat that. There's ready sources of food for people that are minded to go and look for it, even in concrete jungles. Sorry, there's a bit of ramble.
No, that's good. All good things to say.
I guess you can end up covering so many different subjects with this, and it's interesting. I think that what you're doing is interesting because it's it's looking at this stuff and linking it to what we do today. I mean, what would you suggest is how do you feel about farming and foraging? Do you feel that the two can sort of coexist together? Do you think there's a future for this sort of thing?
Well, all I see is this conundrum, of disconnection and a sort of former state of affairs where we were fully integrated, in every respect. Like, as in we were integrated with each other far more than we are now, far more, culture that by the things that we habitually do, and we as individuals, but like we as people that live in a certain place habitually do certain practices year after year, generation after generation, weaving a fabric between people and between people and the landscape. My observation would be that farming, alongside so many other things which are the fruit of our science and technology, reduces the number of linkages that are there. And that's the problem. So, I mean, I think when you start, and I've had this conversation so many times, I'm radical. I think we should cancel agriculture. That's my kind of... It was a mistake. So many books out there now with people saying this was the worst thing we ever did, Sapiens and guns, germs and steel, all these other, the what's against the grain. So many people saying the same thing. Look, this is a big mistake. But nobody except my mate Tor Nortranders, who did this amazing talk called Wild to Tame and Back Again a few years ago, is really adding to a movement that in my view is what we need, a campaign to cancel agriculture. Because if it was such a mistake, why are we saying that we'll carry on doing that? And it's because everybody's saying, look, yes, but the carrying capacity is much greater now. The carrying capacity of the land is limited. Population is much greater. Hunter-gatherers could do that because of the ratio of carrying capacity to species. And I think that's the wrong place to start. Firstly, we cannot get up tomorrow morning and all become hunter-gatherers. So we don't need to solve this argument. Could we, couldn't we? In the sense of, what we could do, though, is recognize the benefit of there being really, really, really many, many intricate connections between ourselves and other species. Because every time we do anything, and every time we need something, there's an opportunity there to get that by this sort of conduit means, like a pipe channeling you, beans from Kenya, power from the national grid, whatever it is, the information superhighway, money is another conduit, you get what you need just by paying the price, So it all comes flooding to you through this pipe, And that's the modern way that starts with farming and carries on through all these technologies that basically simplify everything so that you need fewer linkages, you need fewer relational things to happen in order to get that. Whereas in the past, in order to get my eggs, my milk, my everything, I needed to talk to my neighbors. All of this stuff needed to happen in order to get the stuff I need. So again, it's Garden of Eden stuff. We can either relate and be contingent, or we can say, no, I just want it. Can I just have it? Here's the money. Don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. Just give it to me. Yeah. Now the supermarket. We don't even need a person. We just swipe it through the machine. I hate machines so much. I always queue up. It doesn't matter how big the queue is. I cannot stand to be stuck with this machine where I don't know what to do. And anyway, so it's all conduits versus the network. The fabric of life. So what my argument is, like, I'm not going to say could we eat wild food, 9 billion, blah, 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 or at least feel like I'm responsible to come up with the answer of how,
Yeah.
I will say, could we reintegrate with the fabric of life by seeing everything we do as an opportunity to relate and be contingent? Yeah, we could do that. So why don't we step on that journey? I think if we stepped on that journey, we would find maybe in 1,000 years' time, we were back to where we were. I.e., everything we do is this reciprocal thing with the wild.
Yeah.
The wild is supplying plenty, thank you very much, for our needs. But it would be a different wild. It would be the wild that we had facilitated the emergence of by getting back into the fabric of life. It'd be a totally different wild. So the idea of carrying capacity 10,000 years ago with hunter-gatherers in England is nothing to do with it. I'm talking about carrying capacity of the fabric of life to support and nurture life. And that, to me, is without question. Of course, the fabric of life. But while we're in there undermining the fabric of life, the argument's self-defeating because, clearly,
yes,
we're wrecking the soil anyway. So we can't carry on doing that. So you tell me,
Yeah.
how are you going to feed 9 billion? You tell me how you're going to feed 9 billion because you won't have any soil to do it with. And whatever you say about hydroponics, see, this is why I don't mind you rambling because when I get going, I ramble. My turn. I don't mind a bit. So, I've had a friend in Australia tried to feed his crickets that he was breeding in the attic because he's trying to get people to eat crickets in his restaurant. He threw the scraps to them, and they ate the scraps. When he threw hydroponically grown scraps to those crickets, they wouldn't eat it. They didn't recognize it as food. Now, if a cricket knows that that's not food, I don't want to eat it either. There's something not happening with that, which, that's not the answer. So, yeah. No,
it's. I think you're right. We need to. I'm really happy with this idea of reintegration. We have become more separated. We are a product of that. I have to take a certain amount of responsibility for the fact that I consume in the way we do in this world. But I love this idea of reintegrating. Bringing back a bit more of the good stuff. That improves your lives, enriches your lives. Maybe we need to be a bit more tribal, not in the bad sense, but in a good sense. Maybe we do need to sort of look after our
sense. You mean
our neighbours a bit more, So I'm sort of really quite happy with that, and I think the current situation is people are thinking more about their neighbours, and are you okay? Have you got enough food? Interestingly enough, and I think that this you're right. This conduit has basically where we're fed information and goods and whatnot separates us even further. And a situation like the virus is, I think, reigniting in people this sense of community. Who are my tribe?
Yeah.
Who are the members of my tribe? Well, actually, we're all in the poo together, to be honest. So it needs to be extended. I mean, look at all the wonderful things that people are doing. They're really making a massive effort to look after people. All those medical people that are going back to the NHS. They're doing a wonderful thing, and maybe we need to sort of maybe this is the opportunity to get away from being separate, back to that, some sort of, not, maybe you're right, maybe not back to anything, but going forward. It's going forward. We need to bring forward with us what was good, and not kick it into touch because it was old, but it's good, having that connection with your neighbours, having that connection with the land. These are good things, and it's easy to picture as we've lost it, but I actually really like the way you're saying, actually, this is modern, this is going to be new, this is going to be our maybe what our future should sort of look like. It's interesting. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they were sort of saying, "Oh, we never make anything in this country anymore. We buy too much from abroad. We've got to make it here." But people don't remember the damage the Industrial Revolution caused. It's England, the UK wouldn't have been a great place to live during that period unless you were incredibly wealthy, and probably not very good then either because of the air quality and and all the coal that was being burnt. So I don't necessarily, I like history. Do you know what I mean? But I don't necessarily, when you look back, sometimes you sort of can see actually it's pretty flipping miserable for a lot of people, and we've got it pretty good by comparison today. But I do feel that we need to reintegrate things that are lost, and I think that a bit of community, a bit of working out who your tribe is, and a bit of that is going to be no bad thing. And I love this idea that along with that, wild food foraging is really part of that. I love that idea.
And the thing is, we've all got wild foods in our surroundings, and it's a great point to meet around. I mean, sadly, we can't all go out foraging. All us foragers, I'm sure, we wish we could go out now, knock on all the neighbours' doors, say, "God, we're all stuck at home. Let's go foraging. We'll teach you about but we can't do it.
No,
we've got to isolate and keep apart." So I mean, I'm trying to think about how I can do that by just putting videos out and maybe putting little signs around the village pointing at things, saying, this is actually good to eat. You can do this with it and whatnot. But ultimately, these are points where we could meet around, in the surroundings that we're in. And the thing is, they are common resources. I've had to do a lot of research into the law, and somebody can try and contradict me if they like, but I think I've got the thing clear regarding the property status of wild plants. If they really are wild and no one's planted them, they don't belong to anyone. Can't dig them up without landowner's permission, but I think that's a good thing, because that means the landowner is a steward. So they've got the right to say, can you do that? But it still doesn't mean it belongs to them. It means they're a steward. I love that, because the land is obviously, we've got this terrible thing with land ownership. Which, I don't believe in land ownership, but even if it did, I think, well, at least it should be fair. And it's not fair. It's like the power in the hands of too many people. But the don't belong to anyone.
Yeah.
They bloody don't. So, it doesn't matter whose land it is. These are common resources. And I'm not saying we should be rude to the people that own the land either. It's only polite to respect you're walking across someone's land. But let's be clear, they're not your plants, and therefore we're in a situation where, with respect to landowners, so as not to be rude and obnoxious, that's a given, yeah. But then everybody else that lives in that area, once we're switched onto this, we need to get together and decide what are we going to do with our common resources. I love that.
That's brilliant. It kind of reminds me of there was a chap one September, October. He was out picking mushrooms in the field next door, and I didn't actually. I know it was after. He was after magic mushrooms.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have the heart to tell him there weren't any there, and I'd know, not because I was interested. If I see magic mushrooms when I'm out foraging for edible mushrooms, you go, oh, there's a magic mushroom, whatever. But he was out there for ages, adopting that hunched over position, and I just didn't have the heart to sort of say, did you ask the landowner? Oh, do you know what? It doesn't even matter. There's none there anyway. I know there isn't. So just crack on. An hour later, it wasn't there anymore. But it's a very interesting thing that you say. Yeah, because it's wild, therefore it isn't anyone's property. So by default, it's available to everyone. It's and I think you're right. Digging up stuff. Under the 1981 Wildlife and Countryside Act, it's illegal to uproot and destroy any wild plant. So I trot that out when I'm doing my forays. And that's a good thing, because it stays there and it will come back the following year, and you can visit it again, and you can take leaves or flowers or this, that, and the other, but you're not destroying the actual plant. I love that. But again, that's a stewardship type sort of thing. As you were mentioning, you know that if you dig it up, it's going to die. So there's no point in taking the bulbs of, the tubers of wild garlic. No point in taking that when you've got the leaves, the stalk, the flowers, and those incredible atomic bombs of flavour, the seed pods. Chuck a few around. Sort of spread the love. So it's I love all of this. I think what you're saying there is very interesting, and the bit of the law that I've read in relation to all this myself, it's actually quite a grey area. There's no clear black and white, this is this. And maybe that's a good thing, because that's where it's almost by what it doesn't say rather than what it does say allows us to continue to forage and treat things as common.
Well, this came up a few weeks ago, one of the conversations we had, and I think you're right. It is good that it's a grey area in terms of the legislation, or at least there's nothing solid that can be used to stop people from foraging, because it has to go, at least for things to be fair and good, it has to go to this kind of consensus building in a local area. If we get to the point where enough people know and it is acknowledged as common resources, we don't need legislation then. You've just got your neighbours and people going, oh, come on, don't be a dick, do that.
Yeah.
Or people coming together and say, well, actually, I've noticed if we do this, it flourishes and we have far more than we had before, whatever.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, to be able to go foraging and to collect wild food is a basic human right. I don't know if it's, if it's actually, that is actually a thing. But in my heart, I know that, foraging and picking wild food is a fundamental human right. And to have that taken away, I think we would be so much poorer. It would be a bloody disaster. It really would. So I think the more people you can get into foraging and collecting wild food, the better. It's got to be better. It's got to be a good thing.
Well, I mean, I think it's all part of the same sort of thing. So I'm really kind of almost obsessed at the moment with the idea of home and the homestead. I have been for a while, and I can tell you how it started. Well, in a sense, like just feeling so gutted about the sort of the negative stuff, like the popular vote for Brexit and the popular vote for Boris Johnson's bunch of clowns, recently. You just think, my goodness, we had an opportunity to have a left-wing government that would have, these were good people, whatever you think. I mean, I'm a great defender of Corbyn just because I think he's a good man. I'm sorry, but what more do you want? I know we need other skill sets, but like goodness, why not vote for a good man? We can work out like how to get the practicalities, because he was commissioning like a great study into land policy, and that was George Monbiot was involved in. They were really working on their economic policy, like with radical think tanks, really smart people from around the world, how to do things fairer. They had policy, unlike these bloody clowns. They really did have policy. And so, the feeling that we had this opportunity that was lost, that people chose that instead of this. But where it took me, Adrian, was just like, okay, we've just got to work within our own home. That's where we've got the opportunity. If we want more fairness, we want more groundedness, more integration, more ecology, more, I can't fix that. My vote didn't work. Anything I'm saying to influence the popular mindset didn't work. We can all say the same. We feel utterly impotent, but I can influence how much at home I'm being. Because to me, all of this stuff that we're talking about is about being at home. We're either at home on the land, home in the community, and something we haven't really touched on, but like being in home in your own body. That's where it all comes out from. My body is evolved to integrate with you. My body is evolved to integrate with the land. So if I'm not myself embodied, none of that stuff works. So that's the bit we didn't mention, but very important. But it's all about being at home. This is where I've ended up thinking. So I think it's so funny that the coronavirus has sent everybody home. Go home and stay home. Be in the place you live with the people you live with, and don't go anywhere else.
It's amazing. I mean, the planes aren't going overhead. The road, there's no road noise. And I'm sort of thinking, wow, let's forego those foreign holidays. Let's get the planes out of the sky. I'll do that. I'm happy. I'd do that. Let's get people working from home. Let's cut down on the commuting. I mean, they're reporting 50% less pollution in some of these built up areas. There's a benefit for health there. And by default, obviously, plants that live near the roadsides. And I mean, I'm lucky. I've worked from home for many years, so my business, I work with my wife, and so we've got that sort of working relationship, and it's not difficult for us. I should imagine some people are finding it quite challenging because they're used to disappearing off. But do you know what? Actually, I'm looking around. I'm listening to the birds, which you can hear now because the cars have disappeared. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, it's preaching to the converted, but I'm really buying this. I'm buying this stay-at-home thing, and I think we could easily meet our climate change targets if we just didn't rush around so bloody much and spank lots of fuel doing it. We've got computers, we've got this technology. Okay, that relies on electricity. I get that, but we can communicate. We are communicating now, and we've got a connection. And I think that there's less and less excuses for travelling en masse. Less and less excuses for it. And I think that maybe this is, I've said it already, an opportunity, hopefully, for people to sort of say, hold on a minute, I can be in this place, in this time, in this area. Maybe one of the struggles is that people can't be in themselves. They don't know who they are. They only judge themselves or think they are benchmark themselves against what is out there. What they want to acquire, where they want to be in so many years' time with their career. In of themselves, that's not evil. It's not bad. But I think if you're stuck in a place, all of a sudden you have to start dealing with yourself. Yeah, you have to start thinking about who you are, what you are, and how you relate to your family, your friends, and your immediate environment. You're right. It's a shame I can't go down to the village, grab everyone, and take them out and go, look, guys, this is what you could be. This is what you could be getting into. You're missing this.
Well, having said that, there's far more opportunity to communicate with people. I mean, this is the thing. I'm having a bit of a perhaps I don't hate technology quite as much as I thought I did moment just now, because I'm seeing. So I mean, just to recap on what I said before, my real critique of technology is the fact that it severs these links. So many links that we could, should, and did have. And technology goes around snipping the lots, and you don't need those. Just add this one.
Yeah.
But the fact is, as you say, here you and I talking, and we've never met, and we made this connection through email and so on, and we're having this lovely chat, which is life enhancing, and will have repercussions. Other people can listen in on this chat that may well find it life enhancing too. And then in our little pockets where we are, our little homes, people are starting all these. I mean, I don't have internet on my phone, so I can't do it. But there's all these WhatsApp groups locally.
Yeah.
So potentially using these kind of vehicles of WhatsApp and even email. I am part of a couple of local email groups. We could be teaching our neighbours to forage like that. And the fact is, a few years back we didn't have those things. So good old technology, it turns out,
is can be used for good. Yeah.
Or can be used to create these linkages. Is my main bee in my bonnet is like, are we having more connections or fewer connections? But those vehicles mean that we could actually, instead of going out and saying, hey, everybody come out foraging, we could at least post pictures and say, look, you do have a nettle in your garden. Let me remind you what it looks like. Yes. And here's a bowl of soup I made. Here's the recipe. You could do that. And then get everybody to chat about what they did. Say, anybody make the nettle soup then? So I'm sitting there trying to think of ways to encourage that kind of behavior, not just the kind of get them to make the soup, but perhaps we as foragers could help each other to think about ways to do that. And start a little wild food revolution in our neighbourhood while everyone's stuck at home.
I love the idea of that. I mean, isn't there the Next Door website, isn't there? Is it?
I think that's what I'm on. I think I'm on Next Door at Peckham, which is actually, I'm not in Peckham, but it's the next village to me. It's the nearest one I've got.
Yeah, maybe they could do something with that, because a lot of people are sort of in the next door thing. I'm thinking that actually that might be the best way to get to most people in the area. And at the end of the day, and this is a gag I sort of use with the groups. Everyone's ready to sort of basically cut down their nettles when you could just eat them. And the more you crop it, the earlier, it keeps it all at bay, and it keeps it fresh and it keeps it nice. And just get out there. And I always describe it as the super wild food. Nettles are a super wild food. As you know, they got everything in them, and it is unbelievably good for you. And so yeah, I think that's a great idea.
This, do you want to rattle off the everything if you know it better than me? Because I look at these things and forget it immediately. But I know they're very good for protein and iron.
That's it. Yeah, it's one of the few plants that is got protein in it, which it always blows my mind. I love that. So I believe it's got more protein by dry weight than pretty much any other plant. Packed full of iron, more iron than spinach. And this is the bit where I usually forget and then sort of blow through all the vitamins. It's got all the vitamins. That's just the easiest thing to say. Lots of vitamin A and B and probably the rest as well. You get the picture. And obviously the antihistamines and the rest of it. But for me, it's that idea that it has protein.
Yeah.
And when you eat protein in any of its form, the body recognizes that you've got protein. And it goes, my God, that is food. That is proper food right there. And I think that nettle is got that in abundance. It's got that ability when you eat it as a soup. Okay, you probably put potatoes in your soup and a bit of onion, and you've made it nice. You've made it, a really nice dish, and you've made it flavoursome. But when I think your body recognises that you've got some proper food there. And it can do something with it, and it's substantial, and it's incredibly good for you. Interestingly, it also has nitrogen and phosphate in it that naturally occurring. It draws it out of the soil, so it's rich in that. So I believe that's good for your nervous system,
right,
as well as other sort of bits and bobs. And I just think, oh my God, there's not many plants that you can point to that grow so commonly, so abundant, so easy to identify. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone avoids it. And it is another gift. It is an absolute gift. It is the ultimate super wild food. It really is. And just thinking about it now is making me want to go and eat some, because, it really is,
What's your favourite nettle thing to cook?
Oh, crikey. Probably would be I'm such a soup head.
Yeah.
All year round, it's got to be the soup, I'm afraid. I mean, I've tried it in many different things. I've tried cooking it into lasagna. I've tried, doing all that sort of stuff with it. But it's the soup. And obviously at this time of year with the wild garlic, the combo.
Wild garlic and nettle soup.
Oh, my God, it's just fantastic. The two really complement each other. And I think it's that sort of garlicky, oniony note that the wild garlic gives you is perfect with nettles. It's just such a great, they're made for each other. Absolutely. So any opportunity I have to do something with a soup, it's there. It's done. But nettles are absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned. You can keep them going virtually all year round if you live in a mild climate area. They can. I've picked nettles in winter. They've been pretty poor, but they're still around. They're absolutely fantastic, and it's the first port of call really for foraging and teaching this stuff. I mean, I've run sort of forays, but also because I run an outdoor activity company as well. So we do accommodation and outdoor activities, and there's always a foraging element to the outdoor activities that I run. So I might do an archery session, for example, but I'm sure as hell going to make them eat some sorrel, or do you know what I mean, or something that I've found along the way. And a lot of the groups that we've had over the years include I do corporate groups in the week, but over the weekends it's usually stag and hen parties, which is Yeah, which can be a source of amusement and frustration at the same time. But what's great about this, Miles, is you're then preaching to the unconverted.
Exactly. It's an outreach. Yeah.
This is a great thing, as far as I'm concerned, because you're allowing access to things that people would never normally consider. So one of the activities that I run is our signature activity. It's called Go Wild, and it includes wild food foraging, a bush tucker trial, and firelighting without matches, and a bit of archery. And so they get all those 4 elements within that one activity. And the amount of, people love the archery. It's great fun, and they love the firelighting because that's something that, they have to do in pairs and want to help each other out. But it's the wild food, and we call it bush tucker trial, but really it's just eating the bits that you've collected, but I always forget to give them the wild garlic at the end. And if you give it to them at the beginning, when you're doing a tasting of different plants, they can't taste anything else after that. Literally they've had their taste buds blown sideways, and it's just impossible. So everything tastes of garlic from that point. So a good tip is to start with something that isn't so strong. Usually sorrel gets a good reaction, wild garlic gets a great reaction, and you do the thing where you roll up the nettles in your finger so that they can at least try a bit. And then I sort of say to them, what garden plant do you think, what garden vegetable do you think that nettle tastes like? And some people get it straight away. They sort of say, peas or beans, string beans, long beans, sort of French beans, which is what I think that is the closest sort of flavour. But other people just, I've got grass. That's all I've got. I've just got grass.
How much grass do you eat that you're such an expert on what?
Exactly. Well, I just don't think they eat that many green vegetables from the garden. Do you know what I mean? They've got no reference point. They're sort of eating this bit of nettle once it's been sort of rolled up and all the juice is coming out. So the whole idea is you're breaking the stinging hairs, so that you can put it in and eat it without stinging your mouth. And they've got no frame of reference. They've got nothing to compare it to because they probably don't eat French beans or runner beans, so they don't know what the flavour is. They don't know what they're tasting. Yeah. Put it in a soup and all of a sudden you make it accessible to them. So one of the things that we can offer is like a cook up. So what we do is we get a fire going, get the pots and pans out, get a brew on, and then cook up the things that we found. So again, it sort of brings in elements of the bushcraft and campcraft and things like that. But you're making it fun. You're making it available to. So it's not just a sort of standard foray, if you like. It's with people that have signed up because they genuinely want to know. This is really preaching to the converted, and it's interesting to see sometimes how the lights, the bulb comes on, the light switch is flicked, light bulb comes on. And people are like, wow, I never knew that. I never knew that there was, such a value in something as crazy as the humble nettle.
Well, one of the things I like doing with kids, I sort of do it with adults a little bit, but I always do it through the vehicle of telling them this is what I say to kids. So that's too put on the spot. But I say to kids that when you forage, you're becoming a normal organism because all other organisms, like all the animals, well, I say animals, not organisms, but every other animal just goes around foraging what it can in its place. It doesn't never heard of this weird thing we do called shopping and all of that. So I say, you kids are just a bunch of weirdos. You get all your food from somewhere else. Well, that's weird. That's really weird. So I tell you what, I'm going to help you out here. Yeah. I'm going to help you just be a little bit more normal, So I get them to eat one plant. I say, is anybody feeling normal yet?
That's great.
Yeah, I just love the idea that somebody that's been dragged along to one of your hen or stag do's, just because their mate who's getting married thought it would be a good idea to do foraging, and they're like, you what? We're going to do what?
Yeah.
But they get exposure to normality. I like that.
Well, it's funny because that's exactly what happens. There's always one or two at the back that effing hate it. Do you know what I mean? Because they're coming along because they think they have to. And then by and large, by the end of it, they're actually, do you know what? That was not only interesting, but that was something I never thought I was going to do in a million years. And it is one small step. It's one little thing, you know, and if that one little thing leads to another and another and so on, eventually down the line, they might make different choices at the supermarket. They might make different choices at the ballot box. Who knows? Do you know what I mean? But I'm not saying that, that with a lot of other stuff can make a lot of changes to people's lives. And I think that there's no better way than if you can get someone outside, if you can just get them outside in the first instance and engage them somehow, whether it's through a few jokes, a good gag, you know, and being approachable about it, you know, and being friendly about it and communicating it in such a way that they want to know, because you're not some stern school sort of master about what you're communicating. You know, if you make it available to them in a fun and engaging way, then it's only a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all friendly as far as I'm concerned. You said there about communicating it in a friendly way, and I think that's what foraging does communicate, or maybe put it in another way. Foraging is tuning in to something that has been loud and clear communicated, which is that the landscape is really friendly. It's kind of it's just giving you food all the time.
Yeah. It's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, it's very interesting when you look at a lot of tribal peoples. They often describe their habitat that they're in, their surrounding, as their friend. And the landscape, the land provides, and sort of almost talking about it as if it's a family member, or do you know what I mean, a friend or something. I just find that very interesting. That, you know, if you know what you're looking for, if you've got that knowledge inside, then there is less fear out there. So you can go across a landscape, and you know, you know what not to ingest, and you know what is good to eat. And I just think it's a great thing. It's a great thing.
But then again, there's all these stories of white males exploring different parts of the world, you know, and dying and starving, and you know, because they're trying to, I'm hard, me, you know, I can, you know, and time and again, it's like indigenous people really did try to say, look, you know, you can eat that. If you did it like this, you'd probably, you know.
The most successful. Yeah, you're right. You're dead right. The most successful explorers are the ones that relied completely on indigenous people to guide them and teach them and learn from.
So they actually proved in the end it's not I'm hard me. It's like a help.
Yeah,
we're going,
help me.
Help.
Yeah. I mean, okay, they might have been going off to find, you know, gold and fur and whatever it is they were looking for, but you know, the ones that died were the ones that took so much stuff with them that they were weighed down and made poor decisions and the rest of it. And the ones that were really successful, the explorers that came back with the right information or learned something completely new, were the ones that adopted more of native people's approach to these things, and they survived because they had to eat what they ate. I mean, I've been lucky enough to go to several different countries and try different wild foods, and when someone offers me something, I'm like, yeah, give it to me, I'll try it, I'll give it a go. Eating sort of these little larvae under the bark of pine trees in the boreal forest in Sweden. You know, wow. I've never tried these damn things before, but I'm going to give it a go. And do you know what? They didn't taste too bad at all. Not too wriggly, you know. But I think when you're in a situation where you're in a different country, you've got to rely on other people. You've got to, you can't. Unless you go there and live there for an extended period and start absorbing that knowledge, and the experience of that, you've got to rely on other people. You need that.
It's all coming feeding back into the same kind of themes, isn't it? Yeah, because now maybe we'll start doing that.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Getting it, into where we are now, our local area, is starting with your neighbours and your friends in your local area. I think that's a grand idea.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel hungry. I think I'm going to go and get something to eat.
Yeah, I reckon call that lunch. It's been fantastic speaking with you.
Yeah, likewise. Real pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this week's Worldwide podcast. And I just want to end with some thoughts that I touched on at the beginning about the networks and how the networks are being strengthened. Yeah, I mean, I just want to bear witness to what's happening and just encourage that kind of positive thread in what's happening, the development of these networks, and just encourage you on a particular note to check out our Foraging for Kids thing, which I'm hoping is going to develop into a website actually. But in the meantime, if we can get loads and loads of people on there, not just like people posting material that know about foraging. If you want to learn about foraging and you've got kids, it's a great place to go and be fed, because we're trying to feed people with that knowledge and just capture the space that people get into with their kids. There's some lovely videos there of people foraging with kids and cooking. We just want you to catch the space really as much as the information, of which there is plenty. But also, if you've got friends, this is a great way to reach out. People stuck at home right now with kids wanting something to do. As long as you've got some kind of green space near you, there's probably going to be something there that will provide some starting points. There's even people posting games for kids on there. I've done a fairly ridiculous one with me pretending to be a pirate and talking about scurvy grass. And we're just trying to get that going. Like let's feed the network of kids getting consolidated with landscapes through wild foods. Yeah, and if you haven't done it already, also check out local food networks. There's a thing called the Open Food Network that's got hubs all over the UK springing up. It does seem to be a wonderful thing. In Kent, we've got one in Ashford and Folkestone. And also in terms of networks, we would really love to hear from anyone that's listening and wants to just get in touch. And also, we'd love to use your networks to spread the word if the Worldwide podcast is in any way life-enhancing, encouraging, or inspiring, or interesting, or occasionally funny, anything like that. If it's good to you, it might be good to other people. So please do spread the word on that front. Okay, well that's it for now, and thanks again for listening to this week's Worldwide podcast.